Welcome back. This time we're talking about Resident Evil The Final Chapter, the sixth and presumably last installment in the film franchise from writer-director Paul W.S. Anderson and starring his wife, Milla Jovovick. Now before we get any further, I have a confession to make. When it comes to movies, one of my biggest guilty pleasure franchises is the Resident Evil movies. I honestly don't know what it is about them. I just enjoy the heck out of these movies. Are they good? No. Are they decent? Not even close. But I enjoy them. They're fun. They provide decent action and, well, a few other things. I'm sure there are some other things nice I could say about these movies. But for whatever it is, I like these movies. So I was really looking forward to seeing everything sort of get wrapped up. Because there really were some loose threads that were really waiting to be tied up in this franchise. So of all the people that were prepared to review this movie with their knives wielded just so they could tear it apart like they had every other film in the franchise, I was one that was willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Of course, this film has a lot of the same problems that the other films do that everyone points out, but I was willing to ignore because I just enjoyed them. Unfortunately, this film falls into the biggest trap a final chapter can. And that is, instead of trying to tie up all of the loose threads they had left behind over the course of the previous 5 films, they decided to tell a new story that is somehow supposed to wrap everything up, but instead just ignores everything that we actually wanted to know about and completely muddles the story, so even what did make sense before now no longer does. And say what you will about this franchise. There's a lot of things you can say about this franchise that's not very nice. But one of the things I enjoyed, and I actually did rewatch all 5 films in 3 days leading up to watching the new installment, but the story internally was consistent. Yes, there were characters that just disappeared. There were storylines that never got picked up, but one film to the next never really contradicted what had been told before. And frankly, I was appreciative of that because for me, story is almost always first. That's where I come at a movie, and there were enough characters that I liked. Most of them have been ignored in the last several movies, but the story was it was what it was. But one thing you couldn't say was that it was inconsistent. This film is utterly inconsistent with the previous films. As I mentioned, they try to come up with this whole new idea that's supposed to tie everything together, and it honestly doesn't make any sense if you think about anything that any of these characters have done over the previous 5 films. But even if you take into account that, okay, maybe they were doing things that we didn't know, and only in retrospect does it kind of make sense, though that's stretching it. But let's give them that benefit of the doubt for the next few seconds that was the case. But there are other things, character backstories, that are completely inconsistent with what we were told in previous movies. I mean, this is just plain facts. This isn't like people's motivations or that could be what we didn't think. No, this is what we saw. These were plain facts. This movie directly contradicts that. So as a fan of those previous movies, I was really disappointed with this one as far as the story goes because it broke the rules that it had not up until this point. Now, of course, I'm betting most people aren't going to see Resident Evil The Final Chapter for its complex storytelling. But at the same time, I don't think you're going to the 6th Resident Evil movie if you haven't at least somewhat enjoyed the previous ones. Now, story aside, this film does give us pretty much everything that we expect from a Resident Evil movie. We have zombies, we have weird monster things, we have a bunch of new characters introduced solely so they can be killed off in bloody fashion, and this movie gives us all of that. As far as returning characters, of course we have Alice, we have Ali Larter back as Claire, and on the other side of the equation we have Shawn Roberts as Wesker, and Iain Glen as Dr. Isaacs. Everybody else is new, and as usual, don't get attached because they're not going to last long. My story complaints aside, as a conclusion to this franchise, it's all right. There's nothing to really write home about. I frankly just couldn't get over the very obvious inconsistencies with the story, so I just really couldn't enjoy it much at all. They do leave a window open if they wanted to make a seventh one, if this one somehow makes a buku of money. But this does serve as a conclusion to the 6-film franchise, even though it really doesn't tie up any of the loose threads that we had prior to this film. So really, if you didn't enjoy the other films and thought they were pretty crappy, there's nothing in this movie that's going to change your mind about the franchise. If you're like me, who actually did enjoy the films, well, you're going to get pretty much a lot of the same that you got in the other ones. The one thing that I would say that is a backstep is there's a lot of jump scares and fake out jump scares that were very prevalent in the first film, and they had sort of gotten away from it. There were always jump scares in all of the films, but my God, it was like one after another in this one. It got really annoying. But again, if you enjoyed the previous films, this is more of the same. No, if you're that rare person like me that had some investment in the story and some of the characters who were still alive, I think you're going to be disappointed with this one because it doesn't tie up anything from the previous films. The cliffhanger that we got at the end of Retribution is essentially ignored and rewritten so we can have this new story. And again, just so many inconsistencies with the previous films that it was very distracting and just completely pulled me out of the movie from basically 15-20 minutes on to the end. So yes, as one of those rare true Resident Evil film franchise fans, this film as a whole was a gross disappointment for me. So if you've seen Resident Evil, what did you think about it? Do you actually like the previous ones? Were you like me? I sincerely doubt it, but if so, were you really looking forward to this one and thinking, man, I hope to see how they wrap everything up? Well, let me know how you thought too, because obviously I didn't like how they wrapped things up. As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some of my reviews, and until next time, I'll see you at the movies.